This, I think, we're part of the new here in terms of how change is being made for the better in the country. You know, we are beginning to see proper bottom-up coordination, aren't we, in terms of rising to the challenges we've got. I mean, in many ways, it builds on what we've had to do, doesn't it, over the last decade with the emergence of food banks and other things. Greater Manchester, we started with homelessness, where it was just clear to me 4 years ago that the issue was bigger than all of us. There was just no room for egos or a territorial approach in terms of organisations saying, sometimes the voluntary sector can be quite competitive, can't it? And I just said, well, that just won't work here. We're all going to have to get a whole society approach pulling in the same direction. And we did that through our Homelessness Action Network. And I felt the power of it and the power of the faith community's contribution to that. This is a better way of making change happen. Treasury return to normal, starting to pull its horns in. And, I think recovery is going to be hard. The, let's say, academic side of educational recovery is going to be funded and tutors for some. But the social and emotional side of children's recovery from all of this doesn't appear to be funded, certainly as we sit here today. Not just the sort of the basics that people will need in terms of food, a roof, connectivity, I think, as Ian was touching on, in terms of digital connectivity or person-to-person connectivity because of the loneliness challenge. It is an emotional recovery from all of this, isn't it? It's a mental health recovery from all of this. I think it's pretty massive, actually. And to be honest, people on this call, in some ways, are better placed to deal with that spiritual, emotional side of things than public agencies ever will be. So we are going to have to adopt a whole society approach to this. And I've been talking to Ian about this, and we've kind of been really thinking about structuring this around certain missions within the city region so that everyone knows what we're trying to do. And then we can kind of build beneath those missions the networks of people who are ready to contribute. And it is about, obviously, the public sector. It is about the faith sector working with us, but it's also about the private sector. It's about the voluntary community sector. It's that kind of knitting together all players in this, isn't it, in terms of making that bigger difference. And I think this is a 5-year at least sort of mountain that's a new mountain that's kind of opened up ahead of us, having scaled to nearly the COVID challenge. I think in our experience on homelessness, having a specific goal that we're trying to achieve in terms of end rough sleeping, and then everyone in the system knows they're clear and everyone then can kind of feed into that. I think we need to sort of, the way I see it in a Greater Manchester context is we need to be as clear about other things as we were about that. So, for instance, no child going hungry absolutely needs to be a city region mission, and then we galvanise everybody around that. I think we do need a driver on digital inclusion. The world has moved in a digital direction over the last 12 months. That can increase inequality because it means there are many people who cannot afford to be in the room, who cannot connect to the services and support that they need. So I do think we need to see that as a mainstream essential now. But I guess I'll finish on the big one, which I think is well-being, the kind of general way in which we kind of lift people coming out of this. And that will never be done by one public service working alone. And in fact, I don't think it's ever particularly well done by any public agency. I think it is very much, it's you who are better at doing that. And I think opening up to the scale of the mental health challenge across all ages and all communities and all geographies is something that we need to think very seriously about. How do we build an everyday support system in all of our localities? Challenges are immense, but I think they are scalable with a whole society approach. We are beginning to kind of understand the power of bottom-up change in this country. We've lived in a kind of world where we're always waiting for government to do something for us or to us or whatever. I think we are waking up to the fact that we are now going to have to do much more for ourselves, and building that inclusive approach to bottom-up change is actually invigorating. It's quite liberating, I think, and I think it's the way we kind of engage people more positively in the life of our places. We cannot underestimate the scale of this. This is a a huge challenge that we've got on our hands. And I think, like Marvin, I'm just excited we're on this call with you today, seeing how ready you are to contribute to it.
Obviously, on the forefront, of this national conversation on the need of place-based leadership, rather than what Professor Robin Hambleton calls placeless leadership, which is quite often offered at the national level. And two threats, I think. One is, I think that the underlying drivers of inequality have just been strengthened. The people who are most marginal to the economy, to hope, to health, have been hit first and hardest by COVID. And by definition, they're going to be least well placed to benefit from any recovery. The second is, I think it's about the recovery from COVID, but we're trying to rebuild our cities and, so that we're decarbonised and that we're pro-nature, that we solve our housing crisis. And, trying to get money out of government is like a punch-drunk fighter who can't quite get the punch off, but still believes they should be in the ring. Government does need to make space for other people, other talent, other energies to come through who can act with dynamism, speed, and get stuff done. And unfortunately, national government, it goes beyond party. It's probably tied up with the civil service. It's a bottleneck, and it cannot move with pace and dynamism and understanding. We've set up something in Bristol called the City Office that the church is an integral part of. And if I describe it like this, within a month of getting elected, I convened a meeting and we had chief execs, health service, union leads, academics from universities, police. My office did a back of the envelope calculation. Bristol, with a population of about 460,000, between those 70 people, was about a £6 billion presence in Bristol. And we employed 70,000 people. So my point on that morning was, right, irrespective of what's happening around us, if we all on this morning decide to focus on three things, what could we not get done? If we decided to focus on reducing domestic violence and we were going to work through our financial presence, our contact with our clients, customers, patients, staff and their families, we could have an impact on domestic violence. We ran a scheme when we just went out to faith groups and we said, finding foster families for children is not just down to local government. Housing our children is a city issue. It's a cultural issue. It's for us. So we've got kids in a care system. We need 70 foster families. Who's up for it? And people came forward. And I will say that Hargreaves Lansdowne as well, if I remember right, changed their HR practice to support employees who came forward as foster families. We'll focus on a smaller number of shared priorities. We can really dive in, make an offer to the city, and then ask us what you need from the city to enable you to deliver that offer. I constantly say to people, come and make me an offer. Don't come and ask me for something. Your churches should set an example. If we're going to come and ask politicians to chart a pathway to reconciliation across race and class lines and, care for the poor and do all these things, it cannot just be, it's not a prophetic act just to demand that of politicians and point out why the world is rubbish. Show us how it's done. Be the living example. So I think number one is to be the living example. And that includes the churches joining up and finding a way to reconcile amongst themselves in a faith that is all about reconciliation, right? Two quick things. One is the practical intervention of youth as you've listed today, which is always incredible. And loads of churches got together and organised this rota of people sleeping in their halls. But more than that, they didn't just have them in. They cooked a meal at night. They played games. They put a video on. And you know what? It was amazing. When I went to visit one of the churches, a guy said to me, "This is the first time I've laughed since I can remember." Isn't that an incredible gift? It wasn't just shelter. It was humanity being restored and some hope. But those practical interventions are massively significant. Two more I'll just pick quickly. One is we face some very difficult decisions as politicians, as you'll know. And sometimes the environment in which we have to make those difficult decisions is not one that lends itself to nuanced political discussions. And one of the challenges I've made to the churches, or one of the requests I've made, is to please get involved in the public debate, and help us improve the quality of the political discourse in our city. Because by the time it's filtered through Twitter and all that type of nonsense, it's savage. And there's a quote. There's a Ben Okri, West African author. He says, if you want to destroy a people, poison the stories they tell about themselves. Now, if you look at the social media commentary, I think it's particularly bad in Bristol. It's a poisonous narrative around Bristol. It really is. And we don't know how to kind of measure what price that has. And I've said to the church, whose voices and whose analysis is going to run through the veins of the city? in the way it talks and thinks about itself. And I think the church should also be a source of future leadership. We desperately need to deepen and broaden the talent pool of people who come into public leadership. We need more working class people. We need people from Black and Asian heritage, more women. We know we need to deepen and broaden that talent pool. The church is a massive organization with incredible resources, grassroots connectivity. And if you found good local leaders, you could rally around them and support them into political office. Now, I'm being careful here. I'm not talking about the Pat Robertson school of political engagement, but I think, I do mean stepping outside the boundaries of faith. They don't have to be a person of faith. I mean, it's about finding good local leaders and lending them your support so that we have good, informed people with support stepping into public life. I think those would be quite special contributions to any place.